And if I wait long enough, it'll start streaming. Hello, everyone. Welcome to eLearnChat, where it's all about learning. Today, I am joined by somebody who's all about learning, among 100 other things. It is Dr. Susan Nash. She's co-hosting with us today. And joining us also is Harold Muliati. He's our video producer, and today he's helping to co-host as well. Lesley is still off, and she will be back one of these days, at least part-time. But do check her charity out. It is learnappeal.org.uk. We hope that they're doing well and they come back soon, because they've been hit pretty hard by this whole pandemic thing. Anyway, here we go. This show is sponsored by Relate Corporation. Visit us at www.relatecasts.net. Thanks. And we are back, and there is Harold joining us.
Here I am.
So, today we were going to talk about top 5 instructional design things, snafus maybe, issues, things that could be better. It's something that we all encounter, we all see. And after we talk about that, we'll talk about some of the writing issues that we also see, not necessarily as part of instructional design, but many times instructional designers are also writing these things. So it'll work hand in hand. So what is one of our first instructional design things?
So the first one we have on the list here is the assessments do not align with the learning objectives.
Imagine that.
Oh my! This is one I love talking about, because it's really it ties into how the learning objectives are written, and we can talk about that in a second. But to me, the bigger issue is the assessments don't necessarily assess what you're supposed to be learning, and they either be, the topic can be off, or that the level of what you're supposed to be learning is off. But people don't realize that they're just falling into this thing. Like, it's like a really good thing to do. I'm like,
Did we lose Susan?
Wait, is this?
We may have lost Susan.
Hello?
There she is. Hi, you got cut off for a second.
Yes, that's strange. Okay. I'm here.
It's the instructional designers. They're coming at you.
They are. So,
the ID gremlins.
Essentially, if I'm back now,
you're back.
I want to mention that it's very to get excited about writing the assessments and not realize that you're not actually tying in with what they're needing to learn.
Yeah, it's a good point, because many times assessments have almost nothing to do with what people learn. It's kind of sort of on the side, and the questions don't really match. They may not even be something that was covered. It's interesting, but we see stuff like that all the time. Or the assessments cover such simple parts of what was covered that it's why bother? Or are we trying to pass everybody? That's another thing.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, and then again, that ties into the complexity or difficulty levels, and I see this a lot of times too. Is that really graduate level?
Well, I read once that I read once that the average reading level of somebody with an MBA is about 7th grade. And
wow.
That was 20, 30 years ago. Imagine today. Not good. Now, mind you, that's not all MBAs, but that's a lot of people.
Well, yeah, and if we're just asking people to identify, remember, we're not asking people to apply or to create.
Right.
And so we're not doing any higher order learning.
No. No, it's regurgitating a little bit of what they learned, maybe, and not much else. It's a shame. I think everybody falls into that category because a lot of people don't think much of the assessment, or they don't want to go to where the assessment could go. So that's a definite very good point. And Harold, what's the next category?
Well, before that, Ajay just came in and said, "Hi, Rick and Susan." So, hi, Ajay.
Hey.
So our next up on the list is the learning objectives are not expressed in Bloom's taxonomy terms and not with the appropriate verbs. So tell us about that, Susan.
Okay, so Bloom's taxonomy, IDs will be happy to hear Bloom's taxonomy. It's essentially 5 categories of cognitive. Well, there are different types of learning, focus mainly on cognitive. And so they ascend in difficulty. And the key about Bloom's terms and the categories, like they're identify, apply, understand, evaluate, whatever. The thing about those categories is analyze, create, is that they can be assessed. So, I mean, I said the word understand. That's actually in Bloom's taxonomy as a category, but it's not one of the verbs you would use, because how on earth do you measure how somebody can understand? It has to be more like apply or evaluate or something that you can actually tell.
Well, for example, if you're doing an assessment where you have pieces of a puzzle or let's make it more realistic. Let's say you're learning car mechanics, and you could measure understanding of a problem by how they put parts together, maybe on the screen. Oh, this part belongs with this. I need to use this tool to make it work. So that would show they have an understanding of the problem. But that's not always easily proven with the kind of WBT that's out there, or e-learning, or even training, where we're asking questions that don't really measure understanding. They measure memory and retention, I think, but not understanding.
Well, and especially evaluating, creating. And those are very difficult to do with a multiple choice test.
Right. So at that point, you need other kinds of questions, like you could do fill in the blanks, you could do drag and drops, you could do matching. So there's other ways to approach it, but they're a little harder to put together, so a lot of people avoid them. They're not that hard. It's just that for people who aren't that familiar with the tools, they become a little more scary. How do I do a drag and drop? And drag and drops are a little tricky sometimes. Some tools make it easy, some make it hard. But how do you measure creative, Susan?
Well, and see, that's another thing too. You almost have to be, in that case, in a course that allows you to have some interaction with the instructor, or create something with other people, because it's very difficult to create an online without any kind of interaction. But it's possible, but it's very challenging.
Yeah.
Oh, we got another comment from Ajay. He says, not to be too commercial and self-promoting, I did develop an exceptionally popular LinkedIn Learning Train the Trainer course that includes much of what you're speaking about.
Oh, I haven't seen that course.
You should send us the link, Ajay. We can link to that.
Ajay, if you could send us a link, we'll put that in the show notes. I haven't seen your course on that one. Got to take a look at it.
So should we go to the next on the list?
Sure.
Yeah, so our next was the objectives are not measurable.
Well, we kind of covered that a second ago. But if you say something like, the classification and category, understand, is fine. Then you use words like select or identify or place or something like that. But just to say, show that you. How do you show that you understand something?
Yeah.
And then words of feeling. How do you measure that?
That's a tough one. Yep. Also, how did somebody ever come up with 10 questions? You can only have 10. I imagine everybody wants 10-point questions, and that fits well in the scale of 100. But why is it always 10? Why can't we have
Or
5 or
20.
4 or 3 or 20? And if you really
Well,
want to
I
torch
see
us,
things where we have 20, and that's so you can randomize them and have 10 that aren't
right?
the same one.
Sure, sure. And of course, some tools have question pools, or some software allows you to
Hmm.
create question pools, which can be pretty cool because you never know what question you'll get in that specific test. You're going to get a random set of questions, and that is good. At least you have more of a chance. But I do notice that most assessments we want 10 questions. Why 10? Can we do 6, 7? No, 10. It's got to be 10. So I don't know. What else do we have there, Harold?
So next on our list, we have not enough use of collaboration.
Now, okay, so in this case, I'm really talking more about the asynchronous or synchronous courses that are not just self-guided, but there are other people in the group,
Kind of more of a
and it's
blended
a
e-learning approach.
organized class. Yeah, yeah, and so I mean, many times there's not an understanding of it, how, wow, in our world today, we work in teams, we have to learn quickly, and so our teaching styles are not keeping up with how we're working in the workplace. So people are learning how to take tests, but they don't know how to apply it or collaborate or work with it or learn from others. And we know that we actually learn best when we learn from others. Even when I remember in study groups in college, like especially physics and engineering courses,
Mm-hmm.
we so we'd explain it to each other.
And you had lab partners, so when you were doing the lab part of it, there was always a group usually working together. It could have been one, let's say 2 to 4 people together, trying to figure out how something works. Like I remember in chemistry classes, taking in the labs, there may have been 4 people working on a specific project, and one was annotating, one was mixing, or whatever the project was. Same with biology and other things where everybody is collaborating to try to figure out, okay, now what's actually happening here? What do you observe? What are you reacting to? Are the chemicals, for example, are they doing what they're supposed to? And if not, what's going on? Oh, do I need a little bit more of this? We need another Timmy. These are all the things that get people, you learn from the mistakes too, big time. So
You
collaboration,
do.
yeah, and collaboration is a good thing. Even when you're talking about soft skills subjects, it's fun to collaborate because now you get a diverse set of opinions and ideas and ways of looking at things. Because you might get 10 people in a group, and 2 see it one way, 8 see it a totally different way. Now, are the 2 correct or are the 8 correct? Most people think, well, the 8 are correct because they're a larger group. Well, that would be foolish. They could be an 8 with no clue, or you could have 2 with no clue. But it makes for an interesting test of, well, who's actually got the right analysis? Are they both right? Are they looking at the world with different glasses on? It's kind of an interesting.
I love the fact that you said that. Yeah, I love that because I truly believe that I would not have passed or gotten through my general exams for my PhD without meeting every Wednesday with my friend Susie Halloran. And so what we do, even though we had different areas, and even after we were in our areas, we were working on different topics for exams, we would say, okay, are we really being indoctrinated enough, really, to be honest? We would are we looking at, like you said, are you looking at the world in a certain way? Were we looking at analyzing in the way that the academy said it was correct? And that's really important because that's part of the learning process, just okay, be able to show that you understand that analytical approach.
Yeah. And well, I remember in the old days, and not as much now from what I'm hearing and seeing, people were taught critical thinking in college a lot. There was always, don't just accept anything as blind truth, question, ask, and don't demean, but try to figure out what's right, what's wrong, how does it work, what's going on. That doesn't happen that much anymore. It just seems like you just kind of open your mouth, they put some food in, and Thank you. Here's your doctorate. That's not exactly good.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Well,
I
no,
don't
it's not
agree
that
with that.
bad.
I think that
It's
on
no, it's not that
a
bad.
lower level, yes.
Yeah, maybe at the lower level, but though there is, even at some of the higher levels, there's a little bit of that. I've been in some situations where I've seen it in some places. I won't go into what kind of places, but it was pretty scary. I go, these people have doctorates? My God, what happened? And it was interesting. It was let's just say it had to do with a more public. And of course, this was one specific instance. It was a department in a public agency, and it was mind-boggling. That maybe there was just that one department, because other people were pretty good, but you just went. Everybody had a doctorate. You're just going, oh, this is scary. But that's one place, and there's others where people are very smart and very interested. But yeah, it is interesting what goes on with like you said, the indoctrination, the brain, how we either accept or don't accept things and question things. I think questioning things is very important, not to be bothersome, but just to question. Nothing is 100% black or white.
Exactly, and understanding how to question, so to really tease out different perspectives.
Yeah. Okay, Harold, what's next?
So last on Susan's list here, not enough use of prior learning or situated learning. The instructional design does not tie to lived experience or knowledge.
So, and the reason I think it's important is because that's part of being engaging. Like, I mean, people really connect and learn if they can connect to their personal experience. If they connect to their affect and they feel something, and they're likely to remember something more if their affect is engaged and they're intrigued, or I mean, maybe not driven into a rage, but or simply gratified with confirmation bias, but just some kind of energy where you think, oh, and you actually have a picture in your mind, and it triggers that complex set of experiences, and then that often ties to your prior knowledge or lived experience, and you can build on that, and it's a perfect scaffolding. And so many places just do not do that. They just go quickly recycling.
And I think what we've seen here with a lot of the courses that we've made, many of these, the reason that the client actually needs to make the course is there was something happened that like a legal thing, like maybe they got sued or something like that. So there is some connection that people in the employees, the people in the company will remember. There is a personal connection to that they can draw on in a lot of cases. You just need to do it properly and get the people to realize, oh, well, yes, this has real world consequences for me.
Though I do think with one thing you said about retention, I don't know if you've noticed, but very many people now don't have good memories. And we're talking young people, young, old, middle age, whatever. There's a lot of bad memories out there right now. And they're probably irritated at what I'm saying right now, but they'll forget within minutes, so that's okay.
Well, I think a lot of to blame is that nowadays we just look up things anytime we can't quite remember them. So I think that's probably hurting our both long-term and short-term memories. It's very convenient, of course, but.
Do you ever challenge yourself, Harold, to remember a band without looking it up?
I do try to do that when possible, but. It is difficult. Sometimes you just give in and you're like, oh, I'm just going to look it up.
And then, of course, you ask Alexa or Siri, and they're bone dumb half the time because they don't give you any information. We have fun at lunch. We have an Alexa in our conference room where we usually wind up having lunch together. And you get the weirdest off-the-cuff responses from Alexa. It's like, what are some of the moons of Neptune? And it would say, chicken of the sea is a great tuna. Huh? I mean, it's really that off sometimes. And you just go, oh my God, boy, we still have a long way to go with artificial. Yeah, we still have a long way to go with artificial intelligence. But it's interesting. So now we have one other thing that we can talk about. And I put a list together of not really instructional design things, though some of them could be, but really writing issues. And this is something because a lot of instructional designers are now writing courses as well. Course writers have sort of disappeared. You don't hear much about them anymore. But we're having people write who aren't writers. They're not trained to be writers. And so they struggle through communication skills. And it makes for an interesting aside. Why don't we start reading that list, Harold?
Yeah, so the first one on there is a big one. It's lack of emotion.
Yeah. Let me think about that. If you don't remember something, if you don't have a memory tied to something, you probably won't remember it. And what is better than an emotion to trigger a memory? For example, there's a fire height, there's a siren going on behind you right now.
Yes.
I once dated somebody who, when the ambulance went by, she literally grabbed her head and almost went to the floor in writhing pain. It was a very strange date. But are you okay? Did something happen? And she had some sort of PTSD about that. She had a boyfriend who died, and I guess it had something to do with an ambulance and emotion. Think of what emotions can do to people. I mean, it can be good, it can be very bad, especially in the case of PTSD. But we're talking any kind of emotion. If something that made you happy, maybe made you sad, made you a little irritated.
And of course, we don't want to send people to the floor in agony, but we want them to at least remember things.
Yeah, and so, for example, if you can put any emotion into your learning, into your writing, something to trigger a response. Remember, emotion triggers a response, which hopefully triggers retention. Then you're going to be better off. Because otherwise, if people don't remember anything about your training was useless. How much training is useless
and I
out
think,
there?
Yeah, and so as a writer, and I've been a course writer quite often. I found that, of course, humor is challenging, but the thing is you can be quirky humorous.
Yes.
Or and also captivate their imagination and make them curious. And the best way to do that is to use concrete details and good, not just a lot of adjectives, but places, things, examples, cases.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than reading something that says, "Welcome to the course. In the next few lessons, you'll learn how to enter customer information. Click next. This is the customer name field. Enter the name here. This is and it describes 26 fields. Oh my gosh! And then
I know.
Then you get to enter them. And it's like, okay, they've died already. There's no emotion. Well, there is one emotion: hate. Hate for the course. And so that's not what you want. You want a positive emotion as far as the course, but some sort of emotion of what you're trying to get out of the person. And a lot of people think, well, it's a CBT, it's a simulation. What can you do with this? Well, you don't have to make a simulation just this. You could add a little something to maybe trigger an emotion, like maybe before the simulation, Joan called because she had a problem with this credit card.
Yes.
And if she can't get this solved, her father may die in the hospital because she doesn't have enough money to pay for it. Oh, now you got an emotion maybe going on. Things like that. And that's where emotion just goes away. Without any emotion, it's gone.
I was just going to jump in there and say, yes, scenarios. And also like Mika's journey, but you did that.
Yeah. What's next?
So next we have verbal crutches.
These drive me crazy since I added a lot of content. Things like, and now let's, and now let's, and now let's, and now let's what? Drives me crazy. It's like, stop it. Another verbal crutch. At company name, at company name, at company name, at company. What company are we talking about? This is the company you work at. Don't you know this by now? And over and over and over and over again. There's so many, basically. And we could even say this is a verbal crutch. Click next to continue. Click next to continue. Are we all that dumb that we can't just figure out to hit the next button? Now, I will tell you, And this goes back to the scary doctor thing I knew from that one place. I got a call one time. Our offices got a call, and they said, "We're having a problem with the course you guys created." And what could that problem be? "Well, this one person's been sitting for 45 minutes waiting for something to happen." 45 minutes? What happened? "I don't know. He's just sitting there." And we found out he was waiting for the next button to say, or somebody to say, "Click the next button." So he literally sat there. By the way, he was a doctorate. It's really scary with about 45 years of experience and whatever. I was just going, oh my gosh, sitting there. And that's a long time to sit without maybe asking a question. Maybe this was a unique case, but it wasn't the first time. We've had that in several courses with different companies of people calling and saying, what do we do when we get to this part? It didn't say click next to continue or anything. And of course, the famous one, click the enter key. Where does it say enter? Return? But verbal crutches are scary because it's repetitive. You'll see it so often on pages. So now let's talk about this. So what? That's why I keep saying, so what? Why are we doing this? And when you start correcting it, people get irritated. We go, no, look, this is bad English. It's bad writing. Don't be so repetitive. Don't rely on the same sentence in every paragraph for the next 14 pages. It's bad. Or they'll use in the same paragraph a crutch of repeating itself over and over. When you, what's an example of that? When you turn on the light, make sure you turn on the light in a way that makes sure that the light turns on.
Oh yeah.
I've seen it. I've seen it more than once, hundreds of times, and it's just bad writing again. And I don't like Twitter. I've been on Twitter a lot. I've got a lot of followers. I really don't like Twitter, but it does do one good thing. It teaches you, at least it used to. I think you have longer sentences now. I think it's 250 or more, but before it was 140 characters. You had to be succinct. You couldn't repeat yourself over and over and over. And one of the beauties of good writing is succinctness. So you don't have to beat it to the ground. Say it clearly. Say it simply. You're not a lawyer writing a contract. You're writing an educational piece. You don't need to make it so verbose that people just turn it off. What's your experience with that, Susan?
Well, I think transitions are challenging. And actually some companies, when they give you an example, they want you to sort of have a transition, and they also want to tie in with what you learned before and then go into what's going to. So it leads to this kind of mind-numbing. Now that we've learned how to do this, blah, 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 we will next learn, or you just learned how to blah, blah, blah. And I mean, yes, but the fact that it's verbatim from the learning objectives or whatever, I don't think it's such a good reinforcer.
Well, no, many times they just repeat the learning objectives at the end.
They do.
Also,
yes.
You said one thing, which is another one that is bad. I don't know if this was one of my points, but we'll add it. And that is, hi, and welcome to the course. We will learn. And I start looking around. Who's we? I'm alone in here. What's going on? Who's the we? You mean you're teaching me and you don't know what you're teaching? You're learning along with me? That's bad. We.
That's a good point.
Talk to the person. In this course, you'll learn how to, or you will try to make you learn. There's no guarantee you'll learn anything. But it's sort of interesting because the we makes you start going, I'm not alone? Or are these icky little people around me? I don't see anybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess so. But I also think that it's trying to make you think that you're not really just all alone without any kind of companions in your class.
But you could say that in a different way. You could even say something like, welcome to the course. You are part of a group that's learning this all together.
I get that's true.
So there's a way to say
it.
But you want to talk to the person. Otherwise, the person's going to phase out real quickly. They'll check out. It's like, oh, well, the we can figure out the rest of it. I'm going to have a coffee, that kind of thing.
That too, but it also sets up this kind of cognitive dissonance thing where you go, well, Okay, who are my buddies? Why can't I talk to them?
Well, you can't. You're not allowed. You've been a bad person. At the end of the course, we'll let you meet one of your buddies. Maybe. Don't count on it. You have to learn something first. That means you have to go back to having a good test assessment. So you're kind of hosed right now. You can't get anything you want as a student. It sucks, doesn't it? Anyway, what's the next one?
Next up, we've got coddling the learner. That is too much hand-holding.
Yeah. This kind of goes back to a little bit of what you were saying earlier. If you don't test anything, if you're just walking them through it, what are they learning?
Well, I think it also goes back to the too much click next to continue, like telling them when you're directing them to do every single little thing that they should be able to do themselves. Sometimes, I mean, it is needed sometimes, but sometimes it can put people into just kind of a numb state where they're just...
Yeah. Oh, I've seen people take courses. You know, the current trend is to lock all screens. You can't do anything till the audio finishes playing. So if you have somebody who's a fast reader and who is sitting there, or the one who just wants to get through it, just going next, they're just hitting the enter key at all times, or clicking the next button until it turns on. They're not even paying attention. So the foolishness of saying, we want to make sure everything is locked until they finish listening. They're not listening. They're looking at their cell phone, they're doing something else, and then they're just hitting this until it moves on to the next worthless bunch of speech. And that's the myth of it all. If we make them stay here, they'll learn. No, they'll figure out ways to escape. That's what prisoners do.
Well, exactly. And then the other thing, too, that you're really talking about and addressing really well is that whole thing of learning theory. I mean, how does ideal learning take place? And it usually has to do with level challenge. So if you make things too hard, people go, they'll deal with a little bit of frustration, or they'll check out. Or if it's too easy, they just won't. I mean, it's like, tune out totally.
Yeah. And
just right.
It's a tough one, but definitely it's something that affects a lot of courses and something to consider.
Well, and I guess that's the thing. A part of that is also knowing who's going to be taking the training at the end, because it just reminds me of, for example, what Rick always does is when we know that it's going to be salespeople taking a course, then he always puts a with them button. What's in it for me? This tells you this is how it actually impacts what you're going to be doing as a sales guy.
The salespeople want what's in it for me. Yeah, it's normal. It's like, what do I get out of this? You'll get more money. Oh, great! I like that. It's just, but there's different mindsets for the audience, and that's part of knowing your audience. Understanding what's going to motivate the audience.
Exactly.
Yeah, and like, for example, if it's a lot of executives and stuff, a lot of times they want it to be shorter, and they don't want to be beat to death with a whole lot of
no. In fact, we've had some courses where people said, "Oh God, just get rid of all those reveals. We don't give a damn. Just let it show." You got it, because they're bored out of their wits. They don't want to go click. This is bullet 1. Click. This is bullet 2, or whatever. That drives people crazy. Yeah. And why do that? Especially for adults. It serves no purpose. And again, don't use bullets if you can avoid them. Please don't. Stop. Okay, let's go to the next one.
So next on our list, it is boring page turners.
Well, that's kind of what we've been talking about.
It's kind of what we just talked about.
Yeah. It's the page turners that never change, and you could just buy a book or go on a website and just hit a couple pages and you're done. They're boring. There's no emotion, there's no stimulation. There's nothing there other than the company thinks that they've maybe protected themselves from a lawsuit somehow. It's a one-off. It's a check-off. So, yeah, that's kind of a pretty
well,
easy.
and you were talking about scenarios. I've always found it's good to have an anti-hero in the scenarios. So you have the person who's like, oops, they didn't realize that they were giving away all the passwords, or the social engineering thing, or the phishing. They fall into every pitfall. Yeah. Or you have the person like the spy who's getting in, but you make it so there's like, I wouldn't say that those are anti-heroes, but at least you make you show people making mistakes.
Yep. Yep. Well, we did one course not long ago, about 2 years ago, where one of the characters, or the main character, who's also the narrator, he's sort of a detective, and his name is Lestime, Lestyme. And this whole course is about how to search for help information online for your customers, for customer service reps who need to know this on the fly. So he's less time because you got to spend less time doing this. And throughout the course, you're either gaining or losing time. And at the end, did you make up time? Did you lose it? Did you make it up later? And you got graded basically by how much time you won or lost. And it wound up being pretty successful because they wanted elements of gamification, and what they came up with just didn't work. And so we went for something simple. And the simple turned out okay because we had a lot of people who didn't want to do a game and a lot of people who didn't want to do anything else. We tried to give it an element of, but make it simple. And
there were things to hold people's attention. We had little animations and stuff like that.
Yeah, lots of animations. And it was fun. It made it a little bit more fun. But ideally, can you answer the questions fast enough? Can you look it up quickly enough? And if you can, great. If you can't, we got to train you some more, or you're in the wrong place. So what's next?
So the next we had on the list was wrong choice of venue, e-learning, blended learning, and so on.
Oh, I think what that means is the learning you're putting together is in the wrong format. Maybe you don't need e-learning. Maybe you need more of a blended learning. Maybe you need a video. A lot of times people think, well, we want e-learning. And when all you need is a 2-minute video. We actually did a course like that about 3 years ago that really should have been a Camtasia video explaining how to use something very simply. 5 minutes, you're done. Instead, it became a 35-minute monstrosity that didn't work well, and it frankly was really bad. It was not a good course. It's what they wanted, but it was awful. It was really awful. They didn't like it. We didn't like it. Nobody liked it. And that shouldn't happen. And that could have, in fact, we actually brought up the alternative at the beginning, but they didn't want that. They wanted it entertaining. Well, the entertainment took too long, and it wasn't that entertaining. And then they made us take out all the parts that were entertaining because they didn't want the cartoons. And we're like, oh, well, that kind of kills the entertainment part, doesn't it? And so it was a whole comedy of mistakes, but that can happen. Get the right venue. Like, for example, you were talking about collaboration earlier, Susan. That's probably the right venue for certain things, but maybe for some others it's not, and vice versa.
Well, I agree with you. For example, hostile workplace or workplace bullying or sexual harassment, all those things that you have to take. I mean, sometimes I think that, of course, you wouldn't want to collaborate on that. But then I was going to ask, I've actually taken some training where I get the impression that it's more training people how to do it instead of how to avoid it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
that's
so
true.
Be careful.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, next one.
So next after that, we've got non-succinct or over-wordy.
I think we talked about that already.
Yeah.
Be succinct. Keep it short, to the point. A lot of times courses, well, here's another one. A lot of times people write courses to be longer so it looks like they've done something. That's not training. We've seen stuff like that. Make it short, to the point. If a course can be shorter than longer, go for it. Don't beat it to the ground, and don't repeat yourself 400 times while you're doing it. Be succinct, be to the point, write clearly. Don't write for yourself or to impress somebody, write for your audience. That's another thing. When you write for your audience, let's say you're teaching people who are not readers, who work, let's say, on a manufacturing line, and they maybe a lot of them have foreign accents. They don't speak English that well. So you're not going to write to them at a senior in college level. They're not going to know what you're talking about, and you're not going to try to impress them with language that they may not know. You have to keep it simple, keep it clear, make it understandable for them. These are things that there's no issue with that. It makes it easier for the learner to learn. It's not you're not demeaning the learner; you're actually relating to the learner.
Especially if there's safety issues. Safety protocols. As Whopper that training.
Yeah,
I guess in that case, it's not just very clear, but very unambiguous too, so that it can't be taken more than one way.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, next.
Next up is bad callouts.
This is a problem. This goes kind of a little to the instructional designer portion. A lot of people don't have any imagination. So when they're writing courses and they're trying to make call-outs for the authors or somebody to create something of interest, it falls flat. They don't know how to write call-outs. And again, we talked about this a little pre-show. Go take a class in screenwriting or in creative writing, something that makes you think a little bit outside of your work environment, ways to define or look at something differently. Because if you can do that, then you can make writing more interesting. Well, call-outs need something. There's have to be a reason for a call-out, not just a flying monkey for no reason. Why is that monkey flying? No reason. But he's there. Isn't that cute? Okay.
And another issue that pops up with that, and another thing that would probably be helped by a bit of screenwriting practice, is poor pacing. Like you might have 10 things called out for a short paragraph, and then you have like 3 paragraphs of text where there's only one thing that's supposed to show up.
Yep. Yep. We just did a course that had 15 pretty long animations in it. I think we used Video Scribe.
Yeah,
and
we used Video Scribe.
It was a lot of animations, and this whole course was like that, which is interesting. It wasn't my favorite way of doing it, but the customer liked it, and everybody seemed to like it. But that's a lot of animations, and some of them are fast because you're trying to keep up with the voiceover, otherwise you're bored. There's a lot of things going on, and it was good, but that's a case where you've got a lot of stuff going on. Is there enough time to actually digest it all? I don't know. I don't think so, but it's what they wanted. Is the result what they think they'll get? That remains to be seen. We're not sure.
And next up on our list is poor understanding of tool capabilities.
Yes. The average instructional designer doesn't know the authoring tools, whether it's a Captivate or a Storyline, a Lectora, an iSpring, or any of the 100 tools out there. If you don't know what the tool can do, or even PowerPoint, you don't know how to do a call-out usually. You don't know what to call out. Or, this is common, you learn one trick, and then you call it out every single time for the rest of the course. It's like, no, that goes back to the point of you're torturing people. So as somebody who's a writer and you're writing for multimedia training, you better understand what your software can do, or you're not going to write well. It's just part of the problem. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and unfortunately, a lot of people do get trapped in using one sort of template because they'll create a template and ask everybody to follow it.
Yeah.
And I don't know, soft chalk is one that I've used a lot, and it has a lot more flexibility than one might think, but it takes a long time to put together and learn some of the other options. And if you're having to grind through a lot, I think a lot of it, a lot of the bad writing happens because people expect turnaround that's unrealistic.
Right. That's true too. Yeah, well, that's a whole topic in and of itself for another show, turnarounds and how long it takes to build or not build something. What do we have next?
So our final on this list is poor use of the LMS.
This is something interesting. Again, most instructional designers, or a lot, don't have a clue what happens after they write it or after they've created it. What's the LMS? What's it used for? We've talked about that in other shows, and we've had LMS people on. It's an issue because if you don't know the LMS, you're not writing correctly for the LMS, for the learners. For example, to this day, I still see long courses with multiple chapters in the course that go on and on forever, relying on bookmarking. Good luck, because bookmarking fails a lot. Rather than create one chapter per SCO in your LMS, per content object. That makes more sense because now the LMS is your menu. And that's what it's there for. It should be your menu. Even if you have a curriculum on an LMS, each course within that has its own menu, meaning each shareable object, each content object is now a menu item. And that would make more sense because now your bookmarking will work a whole lot better. You know if you've completed it or not. And you don't have to rely on very busy LMSs losing connections as they do, and losing your data as can happen. So that's just one of the things. Just know your LMS so you know what you're capable of. And by the way, a lot of LMSs also provide assessment tools. You don't need to write complex assessments in authoring tools when the LMS has it in a maybe better way.
Oh, well, that's a good point. Then you're forced to figure out how to make your LMS import it, and you have to spend all this time going and fixing all the errors.
Right. That's good. Yep. Well, I think we covered a lot of points. We fixed the world. It's a better place now. How do you feel? See, we're smiling. We're all happy. Ajay, is Ajay still? Did we lose Ajay?
I don't think Ajay's still on, but
we lost him. See, we had no retention. We failed. But no, that's some ideas. Food for thought. If you have any questions, join the conversation. Put your questions below. Next time, join them live if you can. But put the questions below, and we will get back to you. Now, we're going to upload this anyway, because what we do is we go live, but those sometimes have problems, so we upload a clean version. So when you see the clean version, ask questions, engage, make comments, whatever. We'd love to hear from you. Think you're right, wrong, whatever. Go for it. It'll be fun.
Yeah, and
this has been fun.
When we upload it, we'll link to Ajay's Train the Trainer course that he talked about.
Yeah, that's good.
And I'd encourage people to suggest things that we missed, and we can chat about them.
Yeah, we missed a lot of stuff. There's millions of more things that irritate people. Yeah, that's true. Anyway, well, have a good one, everyone. We look forward to seeing you next week on eLearnChat. Thanks, Susan and Harold. Take care.
Bye, thank you.